Our discussion this morning, we're looking at the sexualization of pop music. That's what one music producer has described the modern music industry. It says that 99% of it is, well, soft pornography in a way, and says the days of innocent innuendo are a thing of the past. But are things really that different now than maybe they were in the 60s? I mean, look back on the 60s. We've always had pin-ups, haven't we? Think of the miniskirt, you know, that was sexualising pop music in a way, wasn't it? 08459 311 111 is the phone number to give me a call on this morning with your comments. Do you worry about what your kids watch on the telly in terms of music videos and what they listen to with the pop music these days, with the lyrics, you know, very suggestive lyrics in some parts? Does it worry you, or do you just think, well, no, it's fine, they don't really understand what it's about, and when they do understand, well, they're old enough anyway? Text me 81333, start your message with the word Oxford, standard rate supply. Or you can email me. Email me your comments through to louisa@bbc.co.uk. Well, let's speak to Mel Fletcher now, who's a local expert in social trends and behaviour from the 2020 Plus group. Mel, thanks ever so much for coming on the programme this morning. If you turn on a music channel, then chances are you're going to see bikini-clad women. Music has become completely sexualised, hasn't it?
Well, you're right when you said a moment ago, Louisa, that the sexual element's always been attractive to teenagers in music because, of course, they're keen to explore their own emerging sexual identity and, you know, they like to push the envelope, have a little bit of independence. But I think there are big differences these days. Firstly, the music and all the image making that goes with it are being pitched at younger and younger children these days. Secondly, I think that music's just one component now in an entire 24/7 celebrity industry, and that makes sure that the images and the lyrics are everywhere these kids go and everywhere they look. And I think the third big difference, and this is an important one, is that sexual references within the music are often a lot more explicit these days and, in some cases, a lot more aggressive. And that's related to the fact that music business is a music business, and artists and marketers know that, you know, you've got to work harder than ever to get young people's attention. So they tend to rely a lot more on shock value to do that. And over time, shocks have to get more and more shocking.
Is this a problem, though? I mean, is this not just the way society's going, the fact that we're all consumed now by a celebrity culture in the first place?
No, I think the future is largely a product of our choices. You know, we're not simply puppets on a string. We do make choices that determine our destiny and that of the community. And as one of your earlier guests said, it's not that we want to, you know, wrap our kids in some sort of cotton wool and hyper-protect them from the real world. I think we just want to stop them losing too quickly what precious little innocence they still have.
So what's the answer then? Is it censorship? Is it the CDs being labelled with age advice on it? What's the answer?
Well, that's a huge question and probably one we can't deal with completely. But I think part of it is parental, part of it is regulatory. We seem to have a real aversion to any discussion about, on anything that comes near to being called censorship. And yet censorship is and always has been a reality of life in community. You know, we don't allow, for example, purveyors of child porn to produce or spread their material. And that's censorship, but it works, you know, for our benefit. And taboos are another thing we don't like talking about, but, you know, not every taboo needs to be broken. In a sociological sense, taboos often play an important role in promoting what a society or a social group feels are important. They draw a line. They help us, if you like, to borrow a term from my homeland Australia, to swim within the flags, to keep our kids safe. And so I think there are things that can be done on a regulatory basis. There are things the government might be able to do too in helping the emerging software industries that help provide family security on the internet, to put a little, even in these tough times, to put a little bit of money into supporting those companies might not hurt.
You mentioned about the regulation of it and the parental control of it as well, and both of the guests that I spoke to earlier on were saying, yeah, it's impossible to watch exactly what your children are consuming in terms of pop music and what they're watching on their phones, what they're watching on the internet 24 hours a day.
That's true. It's very true. And let's face it, even if we could, would we want to? I mean, the whole thing about maturing children is to teach them to make their own choices. And part of that, I think, as a parent, is for me to help my kids ask the right questions about what they're listening to and what they're seeing. You know, questions like, what does this say about the opposite sex? Does it suggest that they're just objects for my gratification? Does it suggest that relationships are about getting what I want while I can? practical things too parents can do, like not giving our kids a TV or a PC in the bedroom, or at least not until they've shown they're able to use it wisely. Setting up those family security levels on the internet accounts so that kids aren't accidentally exposed to stuff that will harm them. And the bottom line really is, of course, that we are watchful, we're vigilant without being paranoid.
Do you believe, though, this is a big enough problem to warrant anything, at government level to happen?
Well, it's not just this problem, of course, Louisa. I mean, a few weeks ago, we had the discussion about the sexualization of images featuring young girls in magazines and so on. And then just last week, there was the whole discussion about the airbrushing of photographs.
Yes, yeah.
So this is part of a bigger discussion we need to have about not just celebrity culture aimed at teenagers either, but about the sexualization of pop culture generally. I mean, how can we expect our kids to steer clear of highly sexualized images if they're on display in every magazine stand wherever we look? And, I think we need to take a good hard look at the whole of what we're taking in around us every day.
Why do you think things have got to this point over the last sort of 3 decades? I mean, we made the point a moment ago that there's always been some kind of sexual nature of some description in pop music, but it does seem to have hit an all-time record now, doesn't it, with the barriers and the boundaries that it's breaking?
Well, perhaps, and there's lots of probably sociological reasons for that, but perhaps one of them, of course, has to do with the ubiquitous media culture of today. And sometimes, and it's only small sections of the media who say this, they say we don't shape the culture, we just reflect what's there. Well, that's rubbish. I mean, if you reflect a thing often enough, graphically enough, you will end up reinforcing it, especially in vulnerable minds. And I come back to that point I made earlier, that oftentimes marketers, and remember this is all about business at the end of the day, they're wanting to sell units and products, they're not there necessarily for the welfare of our kids. It's all about shock value, because shock sometimes, in an age of what psychologists call constant partial attention, where kids are switching from one thing very quickly to another, sometimes the only thing that will get through to them from a marketer's point of view is the shock.
It's a good point, Mal. Thank you very much indeed for coming on the programme.
Pleasure, Louisa.
Lovely to talk to you, Mal Fletcher. He's a local expert in social trends. So listening to what Mal was saying there, it made some really, really valid points there about how things have changed over the years. I mean, look back on when you were growing up. Maybe it was the 50s, 60s, 70s. Who were your pin-ups at that point, and what was it that made you buy their music, have their posters in your room, want to be like them, act like them? Was it due to the way they looked? Was it the image? And how have things